address, but no, I don't have a residence.
Okay. Are you currently one of the people that is at the park and attend?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like you to give the judge a little bit of about your background. First of all, your educational background and training.
I'm 55 this year. I grew up in a real small town in Nebraska. My father was a plumber. My mother was a housekeeper. I had 4 brothers, no sisters. I was the first in my family to complete college. I went to the University of Arizona. I don't know how detailed a history you want, but I grew up Episcopalian, sitting on the hard church benches, believing in love for my fellow man. Nebraska is a homesteader state where conditions were so harsh they had to give people the land to get them to settle there, put down roots, which is my family history. But as soon as the state started taxing people for their property, my grandfather was so outraged he sold the land rather than pay the taxes on it. So my people are basically ignorant and lower income, hardworking, religious. I went to school at a Catholic school down the road from my small town my senior year so I could get out early and get out of town. I moved down to Lincoln, Nebraska, the capital, and went to work in the state capitol for my cousin who had won his Senate seat while he was stationed over in Vietnam. He had campaigned from a distance, and I helped him walking literature and doing campaign work. So I got out of school, graduated early, went down to the Capitol, worked there for a while. I met a very charming reporter. He was the bureau chief for the Associated Press, quite a bit older than me, but I was kind of infatuated, and we ended up getting married. And unfortunately, like many reporters, he was a philanderer, and I didn't know that. And when I found out, it just so conflicted with my moral code that I got divorced. Okay, well, the point is that I have been involved politically a long time. On the Horatio Alger story of you work hard, you keep your nose clean, you get a good education, you succeed in life. So I did. I graduated magna cum laude with Phi Beta Kappa, motor report, the whole 9 yards from University of Arizona.
Did you study with your degree in communication? What was your degree studying?
My first degree, because I wanted it to be widely applicable, was general studies, where I had interdisciplinary emphasis in business, political science, and communication. And I did so well. I mean, I loved the educational environment, and I said, well, I might as well go on for my master's degree. I worked at the university in various administrative units, so I got tuition waivers. And it was easy to get classes. So I checked which of the degree programs had the highest national rankings. It was communication. So I got my master's degree in communication, studying the media coverage of Hillary Clinton. And then once I got that, I thought, well, shoot, I might as well go into my PhD. I might as well be a doctor. And I applied to schools in Washington, D.C., because that's the heart of government. And I was accepted at George Washington University. I was one of the very few who was selected as a graduate teaching assistant. I got all my coursework done, my written exams, my oral exams. I was ready to do my dissertation on the influence that political spouses have on the decision making. And my father died. So I was the only daughter. I had no kids. Mom was all alone. She'd gone from her father's house to her husband's house and never lived alone in her life. So it made sense that I would be the one to help Mom with the adjustment. So I moved back to Nebraska thinking I could complete my degree from a distance, and I couldn't. So I gave up and bailed out. After 2 years where I got my mom back on track so she could take care of her own self, I moved down to Arizona where I had some land in Cochise County next to my brother and taught at a charter school down in Douglas and then at the Cochise Community College between Douglas and Bisbee. And when I was at Cochise College, I was leading this federal program that was called Avanzando. Do you speak Spanish?
Not very well, see.
Well, avanzando means advancing.
Okay.
And it was for kids like me who didn't have family who had gone to college before. So they didn't know the ropes. They didn't know how to succeed in college. So this class gave them the skills to remain engaged and be more productive members of society. Well, as part of the class, I was telling them, you set your goals. You work daily towards your goals. And I had to look in the mirror and say, you hypocrite. You wanted a PhD. You bailed out on it. And here you're telling the kids that they should remain true to their goals. So
I think that was the proper thing to do. Keep going.
Well, so when I got a chance, I attended a curriculum alignment seminar, to make sure that all of the institutions of higher education had similar standards and content for their courses. I met this wonderful man, Dr. Michael Dews, at the University of Arizona. He was the head of the communication department. And I thought, well, why not? Why not complete the degree? So I enrolled again in the communication program. And my dissertation this time was going to be on altruism, how the same act can be viewed differently by different people. You see somebody taking care of a neighbor's kid. One person's going to say, well, that's normal behavior. Anybody would do that. Somebody else will say, well, that's real suspicious. They probably have some ulterior motive. Somebody else would say, well, that's kooky. Why would anybody do anything that doesn't provide material reward? Somebody else would say, well, that's altruism. That's what we all should be doing. So I wanted to find out how much consensus there was out in the public about where to draw those lines between different types of behavior. And again, I completed all of my coursework. I was a graduate teaching assistant there. I got through my oral exams and my written exams, and I'm ready to do my dissertation. And politics came along and got in the way. I ran for, well, I first joined the Green Party to help Dave Croteau with his mayoral race. I guess it's 5 years ago now, in 2007. And that kind of put my studies, sidelined them a little bit. Well, by the time that I was presenting my proposal for the dissertation, some of my faculty members had retired, and there wasn't a good match because it really was an interdisciplinary study again. It drew from anthropology and religious studies and psychology and communication. And by that time, I had lost faith in the educational process. I saw it as sort of a social club for the elite. I saw all of my fraternity boys and sorority girls doing really well, and the students who weren't as resource rich not being equally rewarded for it. And I got to thinking, well, I really don't need people to call me doctor anyway. I've gotten this marvelous education, and I don't need the credentials in order to demand respect for it. So Dave's race was in 2007. I ran for the Ward 3 City Council in 2009. 2010, we did Dave Ewald's campaign for Paula Avowed's seat in the state legislature. This last year, 2011, Dave and I both ran for the Green Party mayoral candidate. I fortunately won the primary, and then Dave was my campaign manager for the general election. So long rich history in education, in politics, in civic engagement. I was vice president of my neighborhood association. I'm active with Code Pink. I'm coordinating the Peace Fair for the Tucson Peace Center this year. I stand with Women in Black. I go to the federal building for protests there Thursdays.
What was your intent of getting involved with the Occupy Tucson?
My intent was to join with others like me who feel that the system is rigged, that we don't have a fair chance at this.
And since you've been involved with it and have the communication background, I'd like to ask you, what's the message that occupying the park and being there, what's the message that is being sent out to the public?
That we need community, that we cannot rely on big business or on big government to solve our problems. We've got to get the general people back together again to reclaim our government, to serve us more effectively.
Are you getting feedback from the general public that they understand and perceive the message and what your group is about?
Yes, overwhelmingly. Letters to the editor, individual conversations, people wanting memorabilia, wanting the buttons and the stickers, the increased attendance at actions and more integration of the peace and social justice groups that exist in Tucson.
Has the larger Occupy movement had an effect on changing the political discussion and agenda even nationwide?
Absolutely.
In what way?
Well, if you, I know my group is familiar with the poll that was done recently on political knowledge, and the viewers of the late night comedy shows, Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, were found to be more politically aware than viewers, consumers of the Fox News stations. And the late night comedy hosts have just satirized the elite privilege. Night after night after night, you hear the 99%, you hear Occupy. NPR has a regular segment on Occupy, letters to the editor. I've gotten radio coverage from a station in Stony Brook, New York. I've gotten international coverage with Reuters. There's awareness, the editorial cartoons, the coverage in the paper, in the monthly magazines.
you aware of any alternative means that would be as successful as the occupation has been in getting your message out and communicating?
Well, if I were, I would be heart and soul into those other avenues. What I'm saying is I've tried the acceptable methods. I write letters to the editor. I call my elected representatives. I pass petitions. I start initiatives. I meet with groups. I have exhausted all of the typical and ordinary paths to impact governmental representation. This is something that was new and promising and really shows great hope. And we need it. Because I am so educated and addicted to information, I've read up, I've made myself aware of what is happening to our planet. Our very existence, our future is in peril through climate change and what's happening with extreme weather patterns. Economies are crashing all around the world, beginning over in Europe, but the dominoes are starting to fall. We've got another issue with peak oil, with extracting so much of the petroleum reserves, becoming so dependent on those resources that we are literally, socially, committing suicide.
And those issues that you just mentioned, are those issues that the occupied group that you participate in are discussing with the public and messaging and trying to get that information out to the wider public?
Absolutely, yes, yes. Those, and as Dave said earlier, many, many more.
And then the occupied group has at the parks actually teaching and educational sessions, do they not?
Yes, they do. And not only the intellectual, the spiritual as well. We have meditation and yoga. We have creative, cultural facets as well.
Have you communicated with the City Parks Department concerning obtaining a permit to remain in the park, 24 hours?
Yes, certainly. Certainly, I'm that rural, old school, go by the book, do things the way they're supposed to be done. I contacted the Parks Department. They will not give us a permit because the occupation, unlike other civic events, doesn't have a specific beginning and end time. Yeah, we have a beginning, but we're not going to be done next Tuesday at 5. We don't know how long this will take. And because of that, we're ineligible. They will not give us a permit.
They also require you to have a...
insurance policy?
Yeah, how big an insurance policy?
$1 million. And I contacted an insurance company and said, okay, can we get an insurance policy? And I was told, no, we cannot. Peace Fair, because it's a single day event, we can have a permit, we can get insurance, but not occupy.
Oh. I think that's all the questions I have, Mary.
Mr. Camp, you're not here before the court today to deny that you were in the park after hours, right, ma'am?
No, sir. I went and took my ticket night after night. Even when there were only 2 arrests made, I made sure that I was one of them because of that by-the-book upbringing.
Okay. Nothing further, no?
Can't miss that up.
Could I just add one more thing? Is that possible?
Sure.
Because I
Yes.
expected Mr. Merritt to ask me again about people being excluded from the park. And I would just like to say that if you watch the parks, there's 130 parks in Tucson. If somebody feels crowded out of one of them, they can always find another one. And I would argue that if you watch the surveillance tapes from those parks, you will find that during our occupation, we brought in a heck of a lot more people than ever used those parks previously. And if we did deny anybody access, it was their own fear, their own hang-ups that kept them out, because we welcome everyone. We make everybody feel that they are part of the community, that they have resources that we value and we would like to include.
I have a question for you, ma'am. That very same reasoning about the hundreds of parks in the city of Tucson, and they don't like it, they can go somewhere else, wouldn't that apply to your group?
We tried, we've been at 3 different parks.
Right.
We keep moving from place to place because they scatter us like field mice. They treat us like we are worthless. Everything in our society is gauged by the almighty dollar sign. How much are you worth? Well, what's your income? And if you don't have an income, you are deemed worthless. And we're tired of that. We believe that there is an intrinsic human value that we all share, that needs to be honored, that needs to be empowered, that we don't have another avenue to do that. We're sick of our people being chewed up and spit out and treated like garbage.
During your time with the Occupy Tucson movement, when it was occupying the parks, how many nights did you spend on the sidewalk, ma'am?
I did not spend nights on the sidewalk.
Thank you.
I
You would
stayed
agree
in
with
the
me
park.
that the sidewalks are a public forum as well, isn't that correct? In fact, some of the people avail themselves of the sidewalk to avoid getting a citation, according to Mr. Coteau. Isn't that true?
That is true.
Right,
Yes.
so if you had chosen to, as you say, go by the book and do the, I forget how you phrased it, but it had something to do with the Nebraska upbringing, you could have walked the sidewalks all night, isn't that true?
Well,
Isn't
I
that
got
true?
that Nebraska
Isn't that true, ma'am? It's a yes or no
up
question.
early and
It's a yes or no question, ma'am. Could you have done that? If you had chosen to do that, you could have walked the sidewalks with impunity, isn't that correct?
I suppose I could have walked the sidewalks
you.
all night
Nothing
long
further,
and been
ma'am.
called a streetwalker by the
Nothing
radio
further.
show.
Go right ahead, Bill.
Yes. As part of the effectiveness of the group and its political message, is there a benefit in being in a park that is observable to the public, that has a central location, versus being in, you know, a park on the outskirts of the city or an out-of-the-way location?
Yes, absolutely. And as far as the sidewalk goes, we had a symbolic presence there. We had enough people along the sidewalk, that tiny little restricted area that we were given. And I didn't feel that my energies would be best spent on hard ground. As soon as we got an easement, I was back.
Okay, thanks all.